The Lesser Key of Solomon, edited by Joseph H. Peterson, is a giant in the world of occult books. It's Some might say that it's been superseded by the Goetia of Dr. Rudd, which has much more expanded introductions. It's got far more appendices. It's just much more complete. And there's also the fact that these demonic spirits have angelic counterparts to keep them in check in this particular edition. However, if we look at the front cover over here, we read that Dr. Skinner considers that of the many editions of the Goetia, the most definitive is that of Joseph Peterson. Here we go. And that is the book that I'd like to show you today. The Goetia of Joseph Peterson. If you'd like to see a review that I did of the Goetia of Dr. Rudd, there's a link in the details. Here we go. So what I'd like to show you today is this one. The first thing that I noticed when I received it was that there is no dust cover. That's because it's a Wiser book and not an IBIS book, which Joseph Peterson has been working with recently. The quality of the book itself is passable. I'm talking about the structure of the book and the physical aspects of the book. The paper is okay. I would say that it's a little bit thin for a book with diagrams. If I go towards, for example, towards the end where I know that there are a lot of diagrams and you can see that they're poking through in an obtrusive way, I would say. That's really as far as I'm really going to go in terms of looking at the physical attributes of the book. I don't think it's as pretty as it deserves to be. Now let's look at the contents, because it's extraordinary. Now in here we get all 5 parts of the Lemegeton. Now I know that Dr. Stephen Skinner declares that the Asana Toria is not a part of the Lemegeton. That is some people's opinion. It's clearly not the opinion of many of the people who compiled translations of the Lesser Key of Solomon. And so what we get here is all 5 parts with as an appendix. In addition, we get the Pseudo-Monarchia Daemonum by Johann Weyer. The Pseudo-Monarchia is basically, it seems to be an inspiration for the Arte Goetia or Goetia. The Lemegeton is actually relatively speaking, it's quite a recent book, or compilation of books. The books themselves were probably written 16th century, the earliest compilations that we find of them appear to be in the 17th century. Now I might be wrong. I'm not an expert by any means, but I think that's as close to accurate as we need to be right now. Now, the influences, yes, apart from the Pseudo-Monarchia, also seem to be Agrippa, the 3 books of occult philosophy. Also Peter de Barno, the Heptameron, and there's also the magical calendar Now, this is something that I only found out about today as I was researching this. The magical calendar looks absolutely amazing. The perpetual magical calendar. Now, this is something that I'm going to need to get my hands on. I found an amazing edition of this calendar with at a French online store. But it's an enormous poster, basically, which is 50 centimeters by 150 centimeters, so by 1.5 meters. It's just enormous, beautiful poster. Anyway, but that's another topic altogether. I want to talk about the introduction, which is fascinating. It talks about the various manuscripts that Joseph Peterson used in order to decide what would and what would not go into this particular edition. He talks about why he would choose one over another and so on. It's very, very interesting, but relatively short. And then we go straight into the book of the Goetia, the Ars Goetia. So here we go. The Liber Malorum Spirituum has an introduction which is very interesting. Once again, we have the compiler of these grimoires explaining that use of these grimoires needs to come from a divine place, a place of divine devotion. If you let yourself be tempted to use these for personal gain, then nothing could be worse. Okay, seems to be the general message. And then we get straight stuck into the 72 spirits of the Goetia, followed by and actually, reading some of these descriptions, these demons seem to be scary, but the effects that are listed are all quite nice. They're things to do with bringing love and making someone honorable and being able to think clearly and these kinds of things. So it's quite, I find it very interesting. I find it very, it certainly gives one pause for thought. Thinking about how maligned these spirits are in our culture. Some of these sigils are very well recognized. This is the sigil of Asmodee, which is actually there's a French board gaming company which is very well known, which has taken the name as the name of the company. There we go. Some of these really just look like electric circuits. So it's very interesting to read all of these, all of the definitions of these 72 spirits, and then there is the working, how to invoke them, how to make sure that they do your bidding and you don't end up doing theirs. There's probably one of the most recognized magical circles with the triangle in which the spirit is supposed to appear. And then you've got the lamen, which is supposed to be worn on your chest to keep you safe. And you can see that these are all names of God, Agala and Tetragrammaton, Alpha and Omega, and so on and so forth. So really the position from which the magician is calling these spirits is from a position of the authority of a Christian. This was the paradigm under which this was compiled, and that's really what's going on here. It's getting demons to do divine work. That's the idea here. I think this is the ring of Solomon, which is to be made out of silver and worn against your face to protect yourself against the noxious gases breathed by these infernal creatures. They're all described as being quite scary until you tell them to stop being scary, at which point they stop being scary and they start doing your bidding. So I think the idea is very interesting. Very interesting. I like Aaron Leach describes demons as being feral creatures, not necessarily evil per se, at least not intrinsically, just feral. And in the same way as you would take great precaution before approaching a lion or a tiger or a wolf, you might even think twice before even attempting to. It doesn't necessarily make them evil per se. It's just that you would want to know exactly what you're doing before attempting anything like this. I know I certainly would. As in, I would not dream of approaching any of these creatures before knowing exactly what I was doing. There we go. So that was a diagram of the brass vessel. The details of which, can be can be found in here. I'm afraid I can't remember what the brass vessel was for, but the brazen vessel. I do know that at the back here there's an alternative image for it, and in fact there are alternative images for a lot of the diagrams that are inside the book here, as well as. I'll get to that in a little bit. There are the notae for the Asana Toria at the back as an appendix, and I think maybe I would have liked to have those included in the I say that, but actually I maybe it's best the way it is. Let me tell you about the Asana Toria just for a moment. I know Stephen Skinner was on the Glitch Bottle podcast earlier this week, and he was explaining about how his new edition of the Asana Toria is the first time that these that the notae are presented, and it's true. I mean, I've seen some photographs of his new edition of the Asana Toria, and it's gorgeous. It's absolutely beautiful. At least the pictures of the manuscript that he's got in his new edition are absolutely stunning. However, it is said that you're not supposed to look at the notae until 4 months into the ritual. The point of the Asana Toria, for those of you who don't know, is to learn fast. It works like this. There are a few prayers to particular angels. Then you're supposed to read the things that you're supposed to be learning, and then you look at the notae. And actually, I've just realized having the notae in the appendices in the back, so that you don't get to see them until you finish your ritual, is ideal, because you're not supposed to look at them until you finish the ritual. So maybe this is actually the best way to do it, but certainly the most beautiful way to do it is probably with Dr. Skinner's new book. Okay, so that's all I've got to say about the Asana Toria. What else do we have here? Well, we've got the Astheurgia Goetia, which has got a further 36, I think it is, aerial spirits, well, actually both evil and good. I know that the Gallery of Magic makes extensive use of some of these spirits. So not necessarily related to the 72 of the Ars Goetia. The Art Theurgia Goetia, is additional spirits with in fact, what the introduction to this particular part says is that they all kind of do the same thing. You can just get as many as you like to do whatever you need them to do, and this is the direction in which they should be called. So Armadiel would be towards the northeast, and I happen to know that this is one of the spirits that is used by the Gallery of Magic. So that's that. And then what do we get? We get the Art Pauline of King Solomon, which is allegedly given to Saint Paul by God. And this is much more planetary spirits. There we go. So definition of when to call these spirits. So of course, as soon as it becomes planetary spirits, then the time of the day becomes very important, and the place of the moon in the sky and the place of the planets in the sky becomes very important. And we start getting into tables because that's the nature of planetary magic. And then we get to the Almadel. Now the Almadel is it's a working in itself. I mean it's freestanding. I mean, you don't have to do it with anything else. The idea is that you get to speak to various levels of angelic hosts, and depending on the color of the wax materials that you're using, and depending on the particular invocation that you're using, you'll be speaking to different hosts of angels. And that pretty much covers the 4 books that call individual entities. They're pretty much lists of entities and how to call them. That's pretty much what that is. And then you had this notary art of Solomon, this lovely frontispiece. Very, very nice. But again, the very, very thin paper it's a little bit of a shame. Okay, so this is specifically Robert Turner's edition of the Asana Toria, his translation of it. So the full description of how to do it, followed by Appendix 1, various addenda found in two additional manuscripts, so some differences that can be found in some manuscripts that the assiduous magician can decide whether to use or not instead of what's there already. I rather like this, the names of God explained. I think that's great. Very, very nice. And then, the Pseudomonarchia, which I told you about earlier on, is basically the same, almost the same list as in the Ars Goetia, in a different order. It starts with Baal in the same way, with pretty much exactly the same description, And then, yeah, there's some differences in the order. You have the Latin with the English translation, and I believe, if I remember correctly, that Peterson has left a table with oh yeah, here we go, comparisons, a table of comparisons. So number one is Baal in Goetia, and in the Pseudomonarchia, Baal is also the first. And then you can see that that there are some slight differences in names, slight differences in order. Number 22 is Pyman, and Grison appears as number 11 in Ars Goetia, and as number 8 in Weyer, and so on and so forth. And then, yeah, some other examples of some of the drawings. So it's really, really a complete edition. There's really nothing missing here. And it's absolutely fascinating to read. I'd say that if you're interested in the Goetia from an academic point of view, this is definitely the go-to text, and yes, a strong recommendation. Of course, this in part exists on Joseph Peterson's website called the Esoteric Archive. Yeah, I'll put a link to that as well in the description. But this has got a lot more detail to it, and certainly, you know, those appendices, which are definitely worth having, are only available here. So yeah, strong recommendation. Please, guys, if I can ask you to leave a thumbs up, that really would help, and to subscribe if you haven't. That really makes my day whenever I get a new subscriber. It brightens my whole week. So thanks ever so much for watching, as always, and see you very soon.